I discovered that I am not the father of my 14-year-old son, and now my wife wants to have a happy family with the biological father. But in court, my son speaks up and my wife is desperate. This is a bit of an emergency, so I'll get straight to the point. I'm 40 years old and I've been married to my soon-to-be ex-wife Megan, 38, for almost 12 years. We have a 14-year-old son together, Johnny, or at least I thought he was my son all these years. Megan and I met at work, and we had only been dating for a year when she found out she was pregnant. I was a little skeptical about having a baby so soon in our relationship, but she wanted to go ahead with the pregnancy, so I decided to support her. We moved in together after we found out about the pregnancy. When Johnny was born, I never even considered doing a paternity test because Megan and I were in love, and by then I was sure Johnny was my son. I felt very connected to him, and he even looked like me, with both of us having dark hair and eyes. So, I literally had no reason to suspect anything. However, a few months ago I found out that he isn't actually my biological son, and Megan had been lying to me all this time. About 3 months ago, she confessed that she had been having an affair with her high school sweetheart, Nathan, for the past several months, even at the beginning of our relationship. She had been messing around with him while we were together, and never told me because she later got pregnant. One of the main reasons she and Nathan had to separate after high school was that he wasn't very serious about his life and had decided not to go to college. At the time, he still lived with his parents and jumped from job to job every couple of months. She thought she needed stability, so she chose to be with me because I was career-oriented. She said that if she decided to stay with me, she'd be betting on the right horse. But now, she had realized that money wasn't everything and was in love with Nathan, so she wanted to build a life with him. Plus, he had had enough time to change, and now he owned his own business, so she no longer needed to worry about money. When she confessed everything to me, she told me that she had taken a paternity test and knew from the start that Johnny wasn't my son, but she had kept quiet because I seemed so happy being a father, and she didn't want to ruin our relationship. She also made Nathan promise that he would never mention their affair because she didn't want to risk our relationship, and for his happiness he stayed away. However, they reconnected at a high school reunion nearly 6 months before she finally told me the truth, and they rekindled their relationship. As he was well established and still in love with her, and she realized that she still loved him too, she had to leave. It was a horrible moment for me because I had been with this woman for so long, built a life with her, and yet this is what she was doing to me as if I meant nothing. Anyway, after telling me the truth, she left the house with all of her things, but Johnny stayed with me because he didn't want to go with her. She hadn't even consulted me before telling him the truth, and he knew everything before I even got home from work. So, the two of us ended up consoling each other and agreed on shared custody of Johnny, because no matter his biological paternity, he was my son completely. I had raised him and no one could take that away from me, not Nathan, not even Megan. I spoke with my lawyer and filed for divorce hours after finding out the truth. The terms of my divorce request were pretty simple and fair. I would keep everything we had and she wouldn't get alimony, even though she had been a stay-at-home mom for the last 14 years since she quit her job after Johnny was born. Despite all my support, she had been deceiving me. She had been using me for money all the years we were together, and I wasn't going to let that continue any longer. Of course, she disagreed and contested the divorce terms, demanding alimony and a large settlement. I was ready to fight for it, I didn't care. But things got worse when Megan filed for full custody 3 weeks ago. Apparently, she and Nathan were planning to move to another city to open a branch of his business, and they wanted to take Johnny with them. They said I would have visitation rights, but she demanded full custody because, for her, everything now seemed to align perfectly for them to become a happy family with Nathan. It was all so convenient for her, but there was no way I was going to let that happen. Since we couldn't resolve it in mediation, this matter ended up going to family court. I was pretty sure this would be easy for me to win, but Megan and Nathan started blatantly lying about what kind of person I was. I had to work hard to prove them wrong, which made everything much more complicated. Even though Johnny himself said he wanted to stay with me because he had grown up here, they were doing everything they could to make it seem like Johnny was confused, and that I was the one manipulating him. They claimed I was too much of a workaholic to care for him by myself and that it would be better for him to live with his mother. There was also the fact that I wasn't his biological father, which made everything take twice as long to resolve. Since the divorce proceedings started and Megan moved out, we had come to an informal agreement about how we would share time with Johnny. The plan was that he would spend the first 4 days of the week with Nathan and Megan, and come to me on the weekends. I thought this would be the arrangement we would stick to even after the divorce. But things became much more complicated when they decided to move to another city and unexpectedly filed for full custody. We've been stuck in a custody battle for the past few weeks. The other day during a family court session, Johnny said something that caused a huge stir. This was the first time he had actively been involved in the proceedings, and at one point he said that up until now he wanted to stay with me, and that he was going to keep that decision. Not only because his life was here, but also because he had overheard Megan and Nathan talking to their lawyer the night before. He had heard them discussing how they were painting me as the villain and making up a lot of lies about me. Johnny started mentioning even worse things than they had said before. Before this, they had only claimed that I was too work-focused and didn't spend enough time with Johnny, that I brought work home and locked myself in my room, always busy with work, even on weekends. They also said that I never cared about Johnny's school performance and hadn't attended a single parent-teacher meeting since he was born, leaving all of that to Megan because it bored me, and that I never showed interest in his life. These things were easy to debunk, but apparently Johnny had overheard them saying they were going to escalate the accusations and make it seem like I was abusing him, saying that I hit him and yelled at him for the smallest mistake. They probably thought that if they brought this up in court, they could get temporary protective custody of him and eventually use it to turn Johnny against me, making it easier for them to win. So, I wanted to get ahead of this and make it clear that I had never abused him, and if anyone was mistreating him, it was Megan and Nathan. For involving him in this custody battle and using him as a pawn just to get back at me for the divorce. Megan had nothing on her own and had the audacity to deceive me while depending on me for everything. She thought she deserved alimony and the compensation she was asking for and planned to use Johnny's custody as leverage to get a better divorce settlement. I had overheard Megan saying on the phone that once they had the divorce money, she would invest it in Nathan's business and take it to new heights. They were practically overflowing with joy while discussing it, so they probably didn't consider how loud they were being. Unfortunately for them, Johnny was with them at the time and hadn't come back to me yet. They were so loud that he was standing just outside the door and overheard everything. After Johnny exposed Megan and Nathan, no one knew what to do, and the session had to be suspended because our lawyers started arguing. We ended up having to leave early. I was pretty happy because after Johnny spoke, I turned to look at Megan and she literally had her head in her hands, pulling her hair so hard that I thought she might rip it out. That just meant everything was true and she was in big trouble. I was glad about how things had turned out. Instead of going home with Megan, Johnny decided to come with me and we went home together. But Megan was furious. She stopped us just as we were about to get in the car, grabbed Johnny by the arm and started shaking him, demanding an explanation for why he had said what he did in court and ruined their chances of living with her and Nathan. When I saw her shaking him, I lost my patience. I stepped between them and pushed her back so she couldn't touch him. Luckily, my lawyer caught everything on camera, and will definitely use it in the next session. I told her to move away and said it was her own fault for being such a despicable person. I was glad Johnny had taken my side because I wasn't a selfish, spineless monster like her. I was already angry about the way she was treating Johnny, especially after what I had found out in court. I wasn't in the mood to let this continue. Nathan came to her rescue and started yelling at both of us, listing all she had done for our family and how now we couldn't even let her have a real chance at being happy with him. I had no interest in talking to that guy, so I rolled my eyes and started getting into the car. But then Megan kept holding on to Johnny's arm and said she wasn't going to let him come home with me because I was brainwashing him against his own mother. She told me that up until now, she had been fighting for full custody to take Johnny with her and Nathan when they moved, but now she'd make sure I didn't even get visitation rights. Those were bold words from someone who had just been exposed as a liar, someone who had planned to lie in court to get her dirty hands on money she didn't deserve. I told her to let go of Johnny or I'd call the police. She said she was his mother and had the right to decide where he went. Even Johnny was still trying to free himself, but she held on to him tightly and insisted that she wouldn't let him go home with me. At one point, things got a little heated. Johnny is pretty built for a 14-year-old, while Megan is small and not very strong, so Johnny did the only thing he could. He pushed her off with all his strength to break free and get into the car, slamming the door shut. After being shoved, she started yelling at the top of her lungs that I was encouraging my son to attack her and that she wasn't going to let this happen. I thought it was unfair for her to say that because he didn't attack her, he just tried to free himself. Maybe in the process she got pushed a little and fell, but Nathan was there to catch her, so nothing serious happened. Well, apparently that didn't matter because she and Nathan stayed in front of our car, claiming they would make sure I lost custody of Johnny if I was encouraging him to be violent just because things weren't going my way. According to them, I was clearly unfit to be a parent. It wasn't until I honked the horn for so long that the sound finally stopped working that they moved out of the way and let us go home. It's been a couple of days since then, and I'm still wondering if I did the right thing by not scolding Johnny for pushing his mother. He seems completely unaware of it all, but I'm in a dilemma now because that day he definitely pushed Megan with a lot of force and he's very strong. I don't want him to repeat that behavior with anyone else, but under those circumstances, I feel like he was justified in what he did. Anyway, I'm confused about whether Megan was right or not because Johnny has had issues with violence in the past. So, did I mess up by not scolding my son for pushing his mother? Update 1. Some of you asked why I mentioned that Johnny has had problems with violence in the past. It's because a few months ago he was having trouble with bullying at school. He hadn't told us, but one day I got a call from the principal's office saying Johnny had gotten into a fight and was injured. The boy he hit in the face was hurt even more. Apparently that kid had been bullying Johnny for several weeks. Johnny had initially ignored him, but then the bully started crossing the line, insulting our family. Johnny didn't like that and he told the kid to stop a couple of times. When the kid didn't listen and even tried to vandalize his locker with insults, Johnny just exploded and hit him. So there was a fight in the hallway. Of course, I told Johnny that violence is never the answer because I don't want him getting into fights or trouble. But in a way I was proud of him for standing up for himself. I guess Johnny has never been violent unless the situation called for it, and I think that's a good thing. Even in this situation with his mother, he was just trying to free himself. He wasn't trying to hurt anyone. Megan misinterpreted the situation and is trying to use it against us, but I'm not going to doubt myself. It's been a week since the incident and tomorrow we have to meet again. First, we'll meet with our lawyers to work out the divorce, then we'll go to court for Johnny's custody. After the revelations during our session, I highly doubt they have any chance. Tomorrow could be the day we finally close this chapter and decide what to do. Anyway, my lawyer and I have gathered all the evidence we could to show that I'm a good father, and we're hoping to win this. Even more important, Johnny's words will carry the most weight. He has made it very clear that he doesn't want to live with his mom. It's not just because he doesn't want to move, it's because she's a terrible person just like Nathan. They'll never be able to raise him well, and we definitely don't need people like them around. I was talking to Johnny a few hours ago and he told me he was really nervous because this would be the first time seeing his mother after he pushed her to free himself. He knew she was very upset about it. He confessed to me that he's trying really hard not to worry about what she thinks, but in the end she's his biological mother. We've spent so many years together as a family that it's hard to accept the truth. He told me he's really scared about what would happen if, by some chance, he ends up being given to Megan and Nathan. I tried to reassure him, which seemed to make him feel a little better, but I can tell this whole situation has affected him. I don't even know how I'll handle things if I end up getting custody of him. How do we recover from that? Because eventually, his mom will leave the city and move in with Nathan. I'm pretty sure that after everything that's happened, she won't be willing to see Johnny again unless she gets custody of him. She's just that type of person. I don't want him to lose his relationship with his mom because I don't want him to resent me in the future. Anyway, we're leaving now and maybe tomorrow won't be the final day of this case, but for my sake and Johnny's, we hope it really is. Update 2. Hi, something very strange just happened. It's almost 4 a.m. and I was asleep, but about an hour ago, someone rang the doorbell. When I went to open it, no one was there, only a brown envelope left at the door. I even checked the security cameras, but the person who left it was dressed completely in black with a hood on, so I couldn't identify them. However, the person was taller than 160 centimeters, so it couldn't have been Megan. They also seemed to be either fairly strong or wearing a very bulky hoodie. Either way, I don't think it was Nathan either, and those are the only two possibilities. What I found inside the brown envelope really shocked me. It was the results of a paternity test, and surprisingly they were positive. The results came from the same lab where we did the test a few months ago when Megan told me Johnny wasn't biologically my son. She had shown me results saying Johnny and I weren't a match. I took the test 3 times just to be sure, and each time the results were the same. I had finally accepted the truth. But the results I just received say Johnny and I are a match. So now I'm really confused. I don't know which results are false and which are real. Honestly, it's really hard for me to believe that Johnny isn't my son because we look so much alike, and I've never felt like he wasn't my son. Whoever sent me these results is trying to confuse me the day before we meet to decide custody. Or maybe there's something I've missed all this time. Maybe Megan and Nathan committed paternity fraud or something like that. I just called the lab, but of course they didn't answer, probably because they aren't even open yet. However, the first thing I'll do tomorrow is go check in person because this is really confusing, and I have no idea what to do right now. I've already talked to my lawyer about it and we'll come up with something tomorrow. First, we need to make sure these results are real. I'll take the test again, but this time I won't say anything to Megan about it. I don't know why, but I have this persistent feeling that I'll definitely get answers tomorrow if I confront Megan with these results. Update 3. Today was a very long day. First, I went to the lab with Johnny and my lawyer to inquire about the results I received last night. Before I could ask anyone about it, this guy who seemed to be in charge pulled us aside and told us he was the one who had delivered the envelope last night, but he hadn't expected us to come. He explained that the first time we took the test, Megan and Nathan had already spoken with him. After investigating and finding out which lab the court used, they made an agreement for him to change the results and show them as negative so that she could claim Johnny wasn't my son and try to take him with her. Apparently, she assumed that once I found out Johnny wasn't my biological son, I would give up my role as his father and leave them alone. However, when that didn't happen, after I saw the results of the test and came back for 2 more tests, she told this guy to help her again and falsify the results twice more. All of this was done behind our backs, and she promised him she would eventually make him a business partner once she got the money from our settlement. He had been waiting for that, so that's why he helped her out twice more, falsifying the paternity test results every time. I was stunned when I found out about this because I never thought she'd be capable of doing something like that. Anyway, he recently changed his mind because he had been in contact with Megan all this time and had heard what happened in family court the last time we met. She had to tell him that things were taking longer than expected, and they wouldn't be able to start their business for another couple of months, so he'd have to wait. He decided he couldn't keep helping her because, clearly, it was very immoral and unethical. So, he decided to give me that document last night. He apologized for all the trouble he had caused and practically begged me not to involve him in anything, as he really wanted to stay anonymous. He was upset because this guy who didn't even know me had hurt me a few months ago just for money, and he really wanted to report him. But that would only mean more problems for me, and I didn't have the energy for that. Maybe if this guy repeats his behavior, someone else will take action, but for now, I'm out of it. Besides, I already had the documents I needed to prove my paternity, so I didn't care what happened to him. If it came to that and I had to prove something in court, I would definitely use it as evidence and report it. However, for now, I had another plan in mind. Later, I went to court, but before we sat down for our scheduled meeting to reach a divorce settlement, I took Megan aside. She was quite surprised by this move. I told her I had received the document last night and that it was the real paternity test result. She immediately understood I knew about the fraud she had committed. At first, she tried to act innocent, but I told her that paternity fraud was serious and that I was giving her a chance to get out of this without any more problems if she accepted my conditions in the petition. She agreed to the first part, but the second part didn't sit well with her, and she tried to negotiate with me, saying that she was his mother and couldn't just let him go. However, I didn't believe any of that and told her that no mother in the world would do that to her own child. So now she could either do what I asked or she'd face a lot of problems. After arguing with me for almost 10 minutes, she finally agreed and I felt like I had won. After that, I finally reached an agreement and my lawyer and I were thrilled because she had accepted the terms of the petition. After that, we just had to wait for our final confrontation in family court, and things went exactly as planned. She wasn't happy about it, but she agreed to terminate her parental rights over Johnny and leave. This took everyone by surprise since she had been fighting tooth and nail for custody in recent weeks, and suddenly she had given up. That seemed a bit strange, but I didn't care. I had won, Johnny was mine, and my lawyer and I finally parted ways and went back to our respective homes. A couple of hours ago, in a few days, my lawyer will have drafted the documents, and she will have officially given up her rights. Then, it will just be my son and me against the world, although I think it's already been that way for the past few months. But I can't wait for all of this to officially end so I can finally try to move on with my life because it's been very intense. For now, Johnny is extremely happy with the situation, and I am too, so we're just trying to make the most of it. Update 4. It's been a little over 4.5 months since the last update, and I'm now completely divorced and living with my son. It's been extremely good for us because we've removed the toxicity of my ex-wife from our lives. Even Johnny is happy not having to see her because in recent times, he had started resenting her for what she did. Johnny just turned 15 recently, and although many people congratulated him and attended his birthday, his mother didn't even bother to send him a text. That shows she never truly cared about him. I didn't reopen my account just to tell you that, but to update you on the situation with my ex-wife and also answer some questions. One question that came up a lot last time and that I left unanswered had to do with taking legal action against the lab employee and also against my ex. But as I explained before, and that's why I didn't respond, I was just tired of so many legal processes. I just wanted a quick way out of all of this and I took it. Some people might have expected revenge or whatever, but the truth is that being dragged through court for months isn't pleasant. So the best thing was to put an end to it and get back to my normal life, even for Johnny, who was also being affected by all this. In the end, I'm a firm believer that karma catches up with everyone. So, sooner or later, my ex will get what's coming to her, just like everyone else who wronged me. This update is partly about that, because some form of divine punishment, if you want to call it that, has already caught up with my ex. Nathan finally decided to cut her off completely because, after they couldn't get any money from me, which would have helped them open a new store, he didn't want to share his business with her. It's quite poetic because she didn't want to be with him when he was a nobody, and now he doesn't want to be with her when he's established. So now my ex-wife has had to get a job, something she wasn't used to. Not only did she lose a husband and a son, but also her lifestyle. But that's what happens when you do wrong in life, at least in this case. And if you're wondering how I know all this, no, I haven't spoken to her or anything like that. We just have mutual acquaintances who've been able to tell me all of this. Luckily, she hasn't shown up at my door or tried to contact us, and since some time has passed since all this, I don't think she will either.